It started on Friday night as I was sitting in my living room. I was getting ready to spend a quiet evening with a cup of coffee and a good old movie. The phone rang. It was an unknown number. I don't usually answer calls like this, but something this evening made me pick up the phone. All I heard was silence, and light breathing on the other side. "Who is it?" I asked, and at that moment it seemed that some invisible air around me became heavier. A voice as low as a whisper finally broke the silence. "I know you're home alone." I suddenly felt a wave of cold go through me. Is this some kind of joke? I tried to stay calm, but my heart was beating wildly in my chest. "What do you need?" I asked, trying not to show any fear. I heard soft laughter in response. "Just have fun, while you still can," replied the voice, and the call ended. I looked around, trying to make sure no one was home. I grabbed a knife from the kitchen and slowly made my way to the front door, checking the locks. They were closed. I looked out the window. It was dark outside. The street was empty. Only the barely audible rustle of the trees broke the silence of the night. I sat back down on the sofa and tried to calm myself down. Maybe it's just someone's bad joke. But after a few minutes my thoughts were interrupted again by a message. It was a text from an unknown number. "Look out the window." I got up and, without daring, went to the window. In the dim light of the street lamps, I saw a silhouette standing directly in front of my house, not moving. He was as still as a stone. I stepped back, frozen with fear. This moment was the beginning of what I call my personal horror. This was just the beginning. I closed the curtains, trying to hide myself from the stranger's gaze. Hundreds of thoughts raced through my head. Who is he? Why me? However, I did not have an answer to any question. I felt a cold sweat break out on my back and my heart beat like a drum in my chest. I decided to call the police. But when I picked up the phone to dial the number, I got the message again. "You shouldn't, it won't help you." At that moment, the feeling of fear turned into panic. How does he know what I'm doing? I decided to turn on all the lights in the house. The bedroom, the hallway, the kitchen. Every lamp was as bright as the midday sun. I thought the light would help me calm down, but it was only a small relief. I looked around for something that could be a weapon. The knife stayed with me, but my hands were shaking so much that I could barely hold it. And suddenly I heard it. A soft creak. It was coming from the corridor leading to the back door of the house. I couldn't believe my ears. Someone was inside. I approached the corridor, holding the knife in front of me. Each step seemed like an eternity. The heart was beating so loudly that it seemed that it was about to explode. The creaking repeated. I took a deep breath and was about to open the door when I heard a loud crash. It was outside. I quickly opened the door and looked outside, but it was empty. Only the shadows of the trees swayed in the wind. I was about to call the police when I heard light but distinct footsteps in the darkness behind me. I turned around and what I saw made me lose my balance. Directly in front of me, in the dim light, stood a figure, tall, invisible in the shadows, but its eyes, they glittered as if emitting their own light. "Do you think this is just the beginning?" asked a voice already familiar to me from the receiver. There was no sound of laughter or pleasure in him, just cold confidence. I took a step back, feeling the blood run cold in my veins. And then the figure took a step forward. She moved slowly, almost gracefully, but her every movement was so terrifying that I could feel the ground beneath my feet cracking with tension. I tried to run, but my legs buckled and I fell to the floor. He stood over me, looking down ominously. "Are you ready for what's next?" he whispered softly, and I realized that there was no escape anymore. I lay on the floor, unable to move, while the stranger stood over me. Every cell in my body screamed that I should run, but my legs seemed to be attached to the ground. I could feel my palm gripping the knife tightly, but all strength seemed to leave me. "What do you need?" I finally squeezed out, trying to suppress the trembling in my voice. The stranger did not answer. He leaned closer and I saw his face in the dim light of the hallway. But his features were vague, as if blurred, as if someone had erased them. I tried to concentrate, but a strange noise began to play in my head, like the rustling of leaves or a distant cry. "You have been chosen," he said at last, his words echoing like a distant echo. "You're playing my game and only I can decide when it's over." I heard the noise again, louder now, as if coming from all directions. It seemed that the walls were pressing on me, the space around me was shrinking. I could feel panic creeping through my body. "I don't want to play," I wheezed, trying to get to my feet. But the body did not obey. The stranger just smiled, and that smile was as cold as ice. "You have no choice," he replied. "You're already in the game." From his words, I felt that this is not just a game. Something was deeper, more dangerous. I felt the fear grip me more and more, but I tried to collect my thoughts. Maybe I can beat his game if I learn the rules. Okay, I said, forcing myself to meet his eyes. What's this game? What are the rules? Regulations. His voice changed, became sly. There is only one rule: survive until dawn. I heard my heart clench with fear. Survive until dawn? It could have been just a joke, but looking into his eyes, I knew he wasn't kidding. At that moment, all the lights in the house went out. Darkness fell around me and I felt panic creeping over me. I tried to touch the walls to find at least some support, but instead, darkness was closing in on me from all sides. You yourself asked. His voice now sounded from the darkness, from all sides. Let's start the game. And then I heard it, the faint sound of footsteps approaching me in the pitch black. My hand gripped the knife even tighter. I could hear the footsteps getting closer and closer. And then they stopped, right behind me. I turned sharply, knife raised, but no one was standing there. Instead, something cold and slippery touched my shoulder. I screamed and jumped back, feeling my heart jump out of my chest. This is just the beginning, I heard a whisper nearby. The night is long. I tried to control the panic that came over me and checked again to see if there were any sources of light nearby. Only with the cautious light of the flashlight I tried to examine the surrounding darkness. The feeling of my hands still holding the knife was the only thing that gave me any sense of security. The darkness around was thick and the sounds were irrational. A rustling, like the movement of something invisible, unfolded around me. I walked forward, stumbling and bumping into objects that seemed unfamiliar. Every step felt like a colossal effort, and every sound made me feel like someone invisible was following me. Suddenly, I came across scattered things that I had not noticed before. An old notebook, a torn newspaper, some leather gloves. I picked up the notebook and, although I held it by each edge, I could not see it in the darkness. Maybe there was something important? I started looking through the pages, but I didn't find anything. The notebook was empty. I threw it back and kept moving forward. A message appeared on my cell phone again. One of your loved ones may be in danger. Try to find them if you can. This message was incredibly frightening. Could one of my friends or relatives be in danger and there is nothing I can do to help? I tried to call, but the connection was disconnected. The phone no longer responded to my commands. The feeling of helplessness became almost physically palpable. I put my phone down and started exploring the house again, hoping to find some clues. In the kitchen I found a piece of glass left over from a broken plate. This could come in handy. I picked up a piece of glass, hoping it would serve as an additional defensive weapon. I heard the sound get louder and it sounded like something heavy moving around the house. I returned to the hallway hoping I could find my way out. But every room I checked looked like a dead trap, as if I was just circling in an endless maze. With a sudden thud, something heavy fell to the floor behind me. I turned around and saw that one of the windows in the backyard was broken and its shards were scattered on the floor. Then a light, sly laugh was heard again, spilling into the darkness. I tried to go outside, but something stopped me, half-visible, half-invisible shadows curling around me. I screamed, trying to push them away, but it was impossible. The laughter grew louder and I realized that this might be part of the game. Maybe there are some rules that I haven't figured out yet. And at that moment I understood that it is necessary not only to fight, but also to solve riddles in order to survive. Questions began to swirl in my head. What other traps could lie ahead? And what else do you need to do to win this game? I went back to the living room where I felt like I was under close surveillance. The lights were out again and the whole space looked like a dark, empty mine. My only thought was to find at least one clue to solve this game and maybe save myself. I began to check all possible shelters, behind the sofa, under the table, in the bookshelves. In every place I found only dust and gunpowder. After searching for a few minutes without success, I came across something strange, a small box hidden behind a display case. I took it out, it was light and something seemed to be moving inside. My heart beat faster. I opened the box and found an old, torn piece of paper. A few words were written on it. Find something that says nothing and only then will you find a way out. This verse was mysterious and incomprehensible. What could be that which says nothing? I started a new search around the house trying to find something that might fit that description. For the first time I thought about old things that are not used, but I did not find anything concrete. My attention was again drawn to the display case. I pulled all the items off the shelves but didn't find anything special. While I was trying to control my panic, I heard distant footsteps from outside. I went out on the balcony, but there was only empty night air. The footsteps stopped and darkness filled the house again. I went back to the living room and realized that the floor was a little different. Maybe something in the floor has changed. I found a small crack in one of the tiles. I decided to check it and carefully lifted the tile. Under it was a small alcove in which I found the key. The key looked old and worn, but maybe it was important to solving the game. I decided to try it on all the locks in the house, and eventually it came to the door that led to the basement. I did not remember ever seeing this door. I took out the key and opened them. The basement was dark and cold, but I felt that this was where the solution to the mystery might lie. I found a small lamp and turned it on. Light filled the basement, revealing many old boxes and furniture underneath. I began looking through them, looking for something that might answer the riddle. Among the old things I found a large wooden box that was sealed. I opened it, and inside was an old, torn book with horrible pictures and text that seemed to be written in red ink. I began to look through its pages, and although the text was partially destroyed, I came across a piece of description of the terrible events that allegedly happened in this house several decades ago. It was a reminder that this game could be connected to something real, and all these events may have had something to do with what is happening now. I felt it was important, but what to do next was unknown. I walked back into the main part of the house, feeling the dread slowly build up. I heard distant laughter again, indicating that the game was not over, and that the next stage was likely to be even more terrifying. I returned to the main room with the book in hand. The feeling of anxiety increased. Every step seemed loud in the silence that reigned around. I felt like I was not alone, like an invisible force was watching my every move. The living room was engulfed in darkness. Again I heard the same giggles echoing from all directions. I walked over to the location of the crate I had found the book in and tried to find any further instructions in it. As I continued to flip through the pages, I came across a section that described the horrific experiments conducted in the house many years ago. I found a phrase that immediately caught my attention. Those who find the light in the darkness will be able to find the way to salvation. The light. I remembered the lamp I had found in the basement. Maybe this is what I need? I went back to the basement and grabbed the lamp. Turning it on, I again felt the shadows in the room begin to change. The shadows on the walls looked alive. They moved and moved as if they were trying to avoid the light. I began to study the room, watching to see if anything new would appear. Suddenly I noticed that one of the walls started to shake a little. I got closer and saw a small gap that I hadn't noticed before. The light of the lamp was shining through it, and I realized that this might be another clue. I tried to widen the gap and struggled to reach a small mechanism hidden behind the wall. After a few minutes of manipulation, the wall began to slowly open, revealing a small secret passage. I entered it, and the light of the lamp illuminated the narrow tunnel. It was wet and tight, and every step was accompanied by an unpleasant creak. My fear grew, but I kept moving forward. The tunnel led to a small room where a large old chest lay. I approached her, and with each step I felt my anxiety grow. I opened the chest and found some old photos and notes inside that seemed important. The photos were black and white and showed scenes from life in the house many years ago. One of the photos showed people sitting at a large table, but their faces were partially blurred, as if something was hiding them. The notes were handwritten and contained incomplete phrases about retribution and justice that seemed to refer to what happened in that house. I checked the records and found one that had another verse written on it. As you seek peace, the darkness can be your ally or your enemy. Remember that when the light goes out, the way to salvation will appear. I realized that this could be a reference to the fact that light and darkness could be parts of a greater game, and I had to find a way to salvation using both elements. I left the room and returned to the main space of the house, trying to keep the light of the lamp on me. I felt like I was on the edge and that the game was far from over. I had to find more clues, solve the puzzles left behind, and decide how to use darkness and light to rescue me. I returned to the main room, once again feeling the darkness around me growing denser. The lamp I found continued to glow, but I could not help but feel that its light might not have been sufficient. I decided to check if there were any other light sources in the house to better orient myself. I came across an old wardrobe in the corner of the room. Inside I found some old candles and a lighter. I lit candles and placed them around the room to reduce shadows and create more controlled lighting. When the room was filled with candlelight, I noticed that a new clue had appeared on one of the walls. It was an inscription that seemed imperceptible before. True fear will emerge when the lights go out. Look for a place where calm and anxiety intertwine. It was a mysterious message that refocused my attention on the combination of light and darkness. I decided to check all the places in the house where something could be hidden. I walked through the basement again, carefully inspecting the walls and floor. Finding a small crack in the wall, I decided to check it out. It turned out to be the entrance to another small space, which was filled with old objects and gunpowder. On a box in the corner I found another note, which described the terrible history of the victims who had suffered in this house. The recording reminded that one should be attentive and avoid dangers that may appear suddenly. While I was going through the recordings, I suddenly heard what sounded like footsteps approaching. My anxiety rose again. I decided to quickly return to the main part of the house, keeping the light of the lamp as strong as possible. Back in the main room, I noticed that one of the walls was starting to look particularly suspicious. Maybe it was another hidden place? I started to see if it could be moved or opened, and suddenly I saw the wall move away a little, revealing a narrow passage. I entered the new premises, which turned out to be an old office. There was a computer on the table, but it looked old and covered with dust. I tried to turn it on, but the screen stayed black. Maybe it was another way of communication with the outside world? Meanwhile, I noticed that there was another box in the corner of the room. I walked over to it and found some documents and photos inside that seemed to be important. Some of them showed different people who worked here many years ago. Others are documents about old experiments and obscure records. I read one of the documents that contained a record of several horrific events that took place in this house. For some reason, these records seemed important and could help solve the mystery. At this time, I noticed that the room had become darker. The light of the lamp began to fade and darkness filled the space again. I could feel the panic rising. I tried to turn on a new light source, but the lamps did not work. The shadows on the walls began to move and looked like living creatures. I heard rustling and footsteps approaching. The situation became more and more dangerous. I knew I had to find a way out, and quickly. I returned to the living room, where the darkness had grown even thicker. The light from the candles was fading fast, and I felt that every second could be critical. I needed to find a way out of this nightmare. I remembered the notes and the book I had found earlier. Maybe there were some other clues? I began to go through the records again and noticed one important detail. Both documents contained references to certain symbols that could be the key to the solution. I paid attention to symbols that appeared on old photographs and documents. I understood that these could be some coordinates or codes that need to be entered into a computer or on some device. I went back to the computer, hoping that it might still be useful. I typed the characters I found in the notes, and suddenly a message appeared on the screen. Your game is coming to an end. You have discovered part of the truth. Now you must find your way out using light and darkness. I realized that I needed to find the combination of light and dark again in order to continue moving towards the exit. My anxiety has reached a critical point. I returned once more to the main room, where the darkness was completely impenetrable. I knew there was little time left. I needed to quickly find a way out and finish this game. I went through all the clues and symbols again. I felt like I was trying to put all the pieces of the puzzle together. And suddenly I noticed that there was a hidden panel in one of the walls that I hadn't seen before. I tried to open it, and it opened to reveal a series of levers and buttons. I started trying to click on them, following the signs and clues I found. One of the levers caused the darkness in the room to begin to dissipate. I saw that a hidden door appeared behind one of the walls. I quickly ran through that door and found myself in the outer courtyard, where the fresh air and moonlight finally gave me a sense of security. I looked back, and the house looked empty and dead, as if everything that was happening was just a bad dream. I stood in the yard, feeling the anxiety go away, but I knew that what I had experienced would stay with me for a long time. I escaped, but the memories of the horrors I saw will not let go of me for a long time. This game was finished, but the terrible moments will remain in the memory forever.